Hang on a sec. Here. Maybe I'll get these two. Yeah, you know, I'm trying to answer your question, Nathan. So, in terms of obeying the law, and what laws need to be obeyed and why and so on, my feeling is that, you know, and by the way, there's kind of a binary thing versus an analog thing here too. It just kind of came to me, right? I mean, look, if the speed limit is 60 and I do 62, I'm breaking the law, but I'm not. That's an analog difference. I'm, you know, somewhat outside the law. There's laws against murder too, but you can't partially murder somebody. You either murder them or you don't. You either assault them or you don't. You rape them or you don't. You steal from them or you don't. Stealing is not a question of, well, I only stole $5, although it is in fact, yes. There's a difference between petty larceny and grand larceny. So there's that aspect of it too, is that kind of sense of, well, yes, you're breaking law, but by how much? Now, let's go to this other question, because I think this kind of goes to the point here. There are two together. Yep, here we go. I'll try to read both of them because they're very similar. Justin Whitsett says, Bill, I got into a blog argument with someone who was trying to tell me that the only rights that exist are the ones that society and the government of that society decides exist. His claim was, since rights do not have particles, cannot be measured or touched, they do not exist, and the only way you have rights is if your government decides to give you some. When I asked, he flat out told me that what Hitler and Stalin did was just and moral because of their government and their society decided that it was. I argued my point very well, I think, but I wanted to get your take on it if you have time. This is how your debate opponent is responsible for the murder of 200 million people. He's as responsible for it as Hitler is. If he's condoning the action, he's complicit in the action. And this is why socialism is not only always a failure, it's always a bloody failure, it's a murderous failure. This idea that the government is the ultimate authority of not only of law but of morality is what murdered 200 million people. I'll get into natural law in a minute, but I just had a thought. We'll talk about a weird coincidence. I was just about to tell you about this thought I had, and I glanced up to the comment section, and there's Winston Smith Room 101, because I was going to talk about 1984. When George Orwell wrote 1984, he was writing about the evils of socialism, and that's why the evil oppressive force in 1984 is INGSOC, I-N-G-S-O-C. It stands for English Socialism. So he was writing about 1984 is a dystopia about what happens when the collectivists take over. It's the nightmare of the collectivists taking over. And when the collectivists take over, the power of the state is everything, and if the state decides that you should die, well, then you die. You don't have rights. There's nothing protecting you. If they want to take your property, they can't. There's no force field around you to protect you. And the thing that made me think of 1984 was the key moment, the center of the story, the fulcrum of it, is when he's being interrogated. It's not when he's in room 101 when he's filled with the terror of the rats. It's when he's being interrogated. The center of 1984, the novel and the movie, is this. Winston Smith is being tortured. His interrogator, whose name escapes me right now, says, what do 2 and 2 equal? And Winston Smith says 4. Gets another hit of the torture. 2 and 2, what are they equal? It's 4. Boom, hits him again. He says, what are 2 and 2 equal? He says, it's 4. It's 4. I can tell you something different, but it's 4. I know it's 4. It's got to be 4. It is 4. That's the truth. It's 4. Hits him again. Tortures him some more. And then finally Winston Smith says, okay, it's 5. It's 5. 2 plus 2 equals 5. And then his interrogator gets to the point. He says, no. And he hits him again with another bolt of electricity. He says, what does 2 plus 2 equal? And finally, after being tortured and beaten up and so on, Winston Smith says, I don't know. And that's when the torture stops. That's what the interrogator, what the socialist interrogator needed. He knew that Winston knew that 2 plus 2 equals 4. And he knew that he could tell him that 2 plus 2 equals 5, or tell him what every other answer he wants to hear to avoid the torture. But that's why these socialists in 1984 were so spectacularly successful. He didn't just want him to comply. He wanted him to be assimilated in the mentality of it. And so basically, what he wanted Winston Smith to say was that there is no answer to what 2 plus 2 is other than what the government says it is. That's the whole purpose of that scene, and that's essentially the purpose of the whole book. What is 2 plus 2 equal? I don't know. Please tell me. When you get to that place, you can do anything. And that's why also at the end of the book, they don't just kill Winston. They know Winston's a subversive and he's against the state. They don't just kill him. They make sure that the last thing on his mind before he gets shot in the head is that he loved Big Brother. They will not allow him to go out as a rebel. They will break him first and make him love Big Brother, not pretend to love Big Brother. Make him actually love Big Brother. Make him sell out the woman he loves. Make him sell out himself, sell out his history, sell out everything. Make him believe that the state is right and lovely, and then they'll kill him. But it's as Brent Cates says up there, it's the abandonment of reason. Reason will protect you. So in terms of responding to your death-dealing socialist friend here, you might tell him a couple things. First of all, call him a murderer because he is. Say that his attitude is complicit in the death of 200 million real people just like him, who were taken out to little ditches and shot in the back of the head because somebody had decided that they didn't deserve to live. And he's absolutely right. The government made that decision, so I guess it's justified. And if the government makes a decision to take him out and shoot him in the back of the head, that's justified. And if the government decides to shoot everything he cares about, if the government decides to shoot his dog or shoot his sister or shoot his wife or his girlfriend or his kids or whatever, the government can do that too. And to defend this is not only reprehensible, it's a lie. Let me tell you what's going on here with this guy. Justin, when he says something like this, that it's okay for the government for Stalin or Hitler to murder people so long as the government did it, he's really just virtue signaling, right? He's trying to show you exactly how progressive he is, how much he believes in the idea of a big state. And people, when they're trying to do this kind of virtue signaling, will make these outrageous comments, and they believe it. I'm not saying he doesn't believe it, but I'm saying he also knows it's not true. I'm not going to go into any details here, but I may have told this story before. I was at somebody's house once. I was dating somebody. I was at her mother's house, and her mother said that she was against guns, and I said, well, I'm sorry. This is just, I'm not going to waste a whole lot of time with this. He's back again, so let's see ya. What a child. If he comes back again, I'll just tee off on him a little bit, I think, because I know he is. Anyway, I was there with this girl I was dating, and I was there with her mother. And her mother said, well, I'm against guns. Really? Okay, well, I'm for them. And she said, I'm against them and my daughter's against them. And she spoke up and said, no, I'm not. And she says, my daughter would rather die in an alley than have a gun to defend herself. And I would too. And she, just to clarify, this woman said she would rather her daughter dies, be murdered or raped or whatever, than have a gun to defend herself. And I said to her, I believe that you believe that now, and I believe that you believe it when you say it at cocktail parties. And I believe that you believe it when you try to impress people with how morally advanced you are. But if you were actually standing in an alley and somebody was beating up, murdering, choking, or raping your daughter, and somebody could stop it with a gun, you would not believe this. You would insist that they stop it right away. So it's a pose, and it's virtue signaling. It's just a cheap pose to show everybody how advanced you are. And by the way, I said, if it turns out that that is in fact not true, if you really, truthfully, honestly, honest to God, really, genuinely, in an alleyway, would rather watch your daughter be murdered and choked to death in front of your eyes while somebody with a gun standing by was held back because of your decision, then that is the most loathsome and disgusting thing I've ever heard. It's simply appalling. So what he's doing, Justin, is he's virtue signaling. He's saying, I'm such a progressive and I'm such in favor of the government that even if the government decides that that people need to be killed, then people need to be killed because that's the morality system of the government. And these are the kind of people that make these sort of things happen. So sail into him, would you? Call him a murderer. Say there's something wrong with him, because there is something wrong with him. You're not better than anybody else is. You've got a defect. You've got a moral and genetic defect that allows you to not see the difference between right or wrong. It's a defect that you're proud of, and that's an even greater shame. And you will get the world that you're looking for, because the first thing that happens when a revolution collectivist happens is the first people to be killed are the revolutionaries. They're the first ones to go. All of the people that walked with Lenin, when Lenin died, they were the first people Stalin killed. All of the, Rome and Gregor Strasser and all the people that helped bring Hitler to power, second Hitler was fully in power, they're the first people that were killed. So he can go ahead and make this argument about how much he likes that kind of powerful government, but if he gets it, he will be the first person to be killed. He'll be among the first. He'll be killed by his children, his ideological children, who will have a fervor beyond his. And his willingness to tell them how much he believes in the cause will not save him. When Zinoviev and Bukharin were tried for, invented crimes against the state by Stalin, they said, we walked with Lenin. We were the authors of the revolution. Stalin, you weren't even there. We made the revolution. Doesn't matter. Off you go. He is an apologist for murder, and he's an apologist for mass murder. And he's proud of it. Don't let him be proud of it. Just tell him your position is so reprehensible and so inhuman and so anti-human that I will not be seen in the same room with you. You're not worthy of debate, because this isn't debate. This is you making statements that sound so impressive. But if you are actually saying that innocent people, that it's okay to take out innocent people and shoot little girls in the back of the head, having committed no crime, because the government decides that's okay, if you actually genuinely believe that, then you are the most reprehensible and disgusting person I've ever met, and I don't want anything to do with you. And say it loud enough so that other people hear it. Because he's trying to posture and show everybody how advanced he is. Now, this connects to another question, a very similar question